Today's video, we're going to talk about budgeting as a student, and I'm going to split this into two different sections. So first, how I budgeted when I was at uni, and then secondly, how I budget now as a part-time student and working part-time. So the first thing is when I was at uni, my main goal was to pay off my uni fees. So my budget obviously aligned with that specifically. And I know that's not the case for most students, and I thought I should make it very clear so that you know why my budget was like this. Essentially, I would earn about, I want to say between £1,500 to £2,000 every single month. Because it's tutoring and I would do these group sessions and sometimes students wouldn't attend, sometimes they would, my income very much fluctuated because of that from month to month. And I'm going to give it an average of second year of uni, because though my income is now at the higher end, so now it's around nearer to 2.5k, working roughly the same hours. In fact, I was working more and earning less back then. I'm just giving an average because this is not easily achievable whilst you're at uni. This is because I've had the years of uni experience that I did to get to this point, if that makes sense. So I would earn about 1.5, and then because my main goal is to pay for my uni, I would put at least £1,000 of that away. If I was earning closer to 2,000 that month, then I put 1,500 away, and it will be like I'm paying off, like you can imagine as my debt, like that's my student debt, but it's not actually debt, it's obviously just my uni fees. And I would put that away and pay for that. Like I would just keep it in my checking account. Then with the rest of the money, I would always make sure that I did two things. So I had a very small investment amount every single month, because I was like, I'm working, I might as well build up my finances, right? I might as well build up my investments, because when else am I going to do it if not now? Now, depending on the situation, if you also, like me, are trying to pay for uni, you might not have enough to put away in investments, in which case focus on paying for uni. Whether or not it's worth paying for uni is a whole different video, and I'll link that for you up there. I've made a video on that, whether it's worth paying for uni all by yourself or just taking out a student loan. This is here in the UK. I know in different countries it's different. Anyway, so if you are investing, then you're going to kind of follow a scheme that I did. So you can put away a small monthly amount every single month. And for me, it was £100 because that's what I could afford. If you can't do 100, you should do 50. If you can't do 50, you should put 25 away. But for my platform, which is Hargreaves Lansdown HL, and for the index fund that I was trying to invest in, it had to be £100 every single month, minimum amount to put in. Now, obviously, you can put £50 today and then £50 next month and then invest it all together next month. But it just depends on your platform, your trading platform, your amount that you're earning, and so on and so forth. But that £100 for me was non-negotiable every single month. And because of that, I have actually like a good buffer in terms of my investments, because I've been doing that since I was 18, every single month putting £100 in, and now it's a good amount. And then let's say, for example, I put away £1,000. If I'm being honest, it was more to like maybe 1.2k, because I was just trying to save as much as I could, because it meant I had to work less. Later, once I was certain that, okay, I've reached my uni fee threshold, I don't need to work anymore this year if I don't want to. Obviously I did anyway, because I was now building up my reserves for next year, and then by the time I got to final year, I had saved enough already in the previous years that I didn't need to work as hard in final year, which is why I quit my tutoring job as well at the centre. I still did it privately because it just meant I could focus on my final year, and I was able to do that because I had been working so hard for years 1, 2 and 3. Now, with the remaining, so if I put 1.2k away, and then I put £100 away and save investments every single month, that leaves me with about £200 spending. And I would use that because sometimes I would buy myself lunch out and about when I was at uni. If I didn't pack it with me, most of the time I would try pack it with me, because again, I was living on a very strict budget. And thankfully I didn't have any bills or anything like that to pay, because I was living with my parents. And I always feel like that's a really unrelatable experience, but when I think about it, I'm sure many people do live with their parents as they're going through uni. And if you can stay with your parents, I would 1,000,000,000% recommend that you do, because you're racking up student debt for genuinely no reason. If you have the choice of staying with your parents and it's actually feasible, and you don't, and you kind of, I know people want to have that uni experience and stuff, but you have to really ask yourself, is it worth it? Is it worth being in more debt than you need to be just to have a certain experience of something? Again, that's each their individual choice, isn't it? But I personally don't think it is, because debt's something that's going to last you forever, or like it's going to take forever to pay off. But if you invest in yourself, you're going to thank yourself later, as opposed to having a short-term experience that leaves you with lasting debt, you know? Either way, that's your own decision to make. But if you can, definitely live with your parents, because it will help a lot. And like, even if you do like help your parents with bills and stuff, or like because you live there, you have to pay some bills or rent or whatever it is that you're doing, it's still only going to be a fraction of what you have to pay if you do everything completely by yourself and you live in accommodation. Because then you have to do rent, you have to do rent and bills combined, you have to do grocery shops, you have to do like everything by yourself, and that takes a lot more resources. And so my biggest categories were food, which was my lunches. It wasn't even eaten out or anything like that like crazy. When I had more reserves, I would treat myself here and then and go out with friends and stuff, have meals, things like that, and then also gifts as well. So if there were any big occasions coming up, obviously you should gift people. So I would have a certain amount per month that I can either like save for bigger gifts or just give gifts as they come up. Some months, obviously, the uni fees installment dates that I had to be paying were coming up sooner. And so those months, if I wasn't near my amount, I would be focusing on saving more for my fees and then not spending as much on myself. So in the previous one, I've got £100 in investment, and then I've got 1.2k for my fees, and then like about £200 for spending. But for example, if I've made about 1.5 in a month where my fees are coming up and I haven't actually met the threshold that I need to for that payment, then I would put pretty much all of it away in savings. My one non-negotiable was £100 every single month, except for 1 month where I had to take some money out of my investments because I wasn't able to make the amount that I was supposed to pay, right? But it was not a big deal because the only real issue there is if it's at a loss, and it wasn't at a loss, it was fine. And then the second issue is that it takes away from my 20k tax-free savings or investments. But at that moment in time, I wasn't even making anywhere near 5k to put into my investments, so that was the least of my concerns. Yeah, so in those months, I would literally only have about £50 to £100 spending if I could cap it, and everything else would just be investments and then go into my uni fees. And sometimes I didn't even spend. Like, I would just not spend, and I would wait till the next month for whatever it is I wanted. And then if I ever did, I would have a budget about £100 each month I can spend. And if I ever did spend £150 this month, then I would take from next month's budget, which might seem overkill to some, but because I was operating on such a low amount and I had a lot to pay, I kind of had to do it that way. And also, some people might think, oh, well, obviously it's easy for you because you're living with your parents and stuff, so you have fewer expenses. Yes, that's true. But also, it was only possible because I wasn't spending all the money that I was getting. Like, I was putting pretty much 2/3 or 3/4 of it in my checkings account. I'm like, I'm not allowed to touch this until my fees have been paid off. And that's also what's helped as well, having some discipline. Okay, and one thing that I want to say about credit cards is if you can and you trust yourself, because again, I'm sort of talking to 18-year-old me back then, and I'm relatively disciplined with money. And if you feel that that's you as well, opening a credit card could honestly be a very, very good idea. I didn't, and I still haven't opened a credit card account now, but that's just because it's so much harder for me to do because I don't actually have a full-time job in this unemployed time, right? The work that I do is just considered self-employed. So next year when I do, well, not next year, actually, like literally in 3 weeks. So in September. Once I do, I can kind of apply and open one. But back then I was actually working and I had a proper part-time job, like I was on payroll, whatever. Anyway, if you do, and you can show that you have an income, a certain amount of income, I can't remember if it's £1,000, I'll try and research it and put it up on the screen. But the credit card that you can get from HSBC is relatively easy to get, according to some of my friends. I don't know how it is because I've never tried to apply for it. But if you can, and you think, in fact, not you think, you are certain that you are able to control your spending and not fall into credit card debt or anything like that, because that's horrendous debt, you should open one because it's going to really help you out in the future in terms of your credit score and things like that. And also, one thing about credit cards is that you need to, like, for example, if you have a £1,000 borrowing limit, there's a certain percentage of that you can actually use. So just because you have £1,000 doesn't mean you should be using £1,000. It also doesn't mean you're allowed to use £0 because so say for example, £200 is like the optimum amount to spend on that credit card. And it all depends on the maximum limit. You should only be spending within £200, or like close to £200. If you spend way less than that, it's gonna not do good for your credit score. And if you obviously overspend, it's also not going to do good on your credit score. Obviously, if you do not pay the credit card off, then you will be in debt, which is horrendous for your credit score. But keep that in mind as well. Like, just because you have a certain budget doesn't mean you should be using all the budget. Do some research and educate yourself on how these things work before you actually get into it, because you don't want to get into a fix and then be like, I really should look into this earlier, because that's not useful, that's not helpful. Okay, so that was me 2 to 3 years ago, I'd say. Now my budget looks like this. So I earn roughly £2,500 a year, oh my word, a month. And that's split into, so the way that I was taking all my money and putting it into my uni fees, I would do the same thing now, but now it's with investments. And I have a lot more spending money because money is for spending when you don't have certain things that you need to pay off. And I know that I'm also saving, investing, and all of these things, so it's not a huge deal. So I have about a 200 to 500 spending limit, which leaves me with £2,000. And I'm saying it as spending first, but I do actually put my investments and things away first. Or like I mentally allocate, okay, that's £1,000 for investments, I'm not going to touch that money. But what, again, about roughly 1,000 to 1.5k, I have been putting away in the recent months, because when I first left uni, I was spending all of my money. Like, I was working, but because I wasn't really auditing or checking anything or budgeting, because I was like, oh, it's fine, I don't have to pay uni fees, I was spending literally every penny. Like I was spending thousands every single month. I don't even know on what, because it was mostly me and my sister just going out to eat, and she also wasn't working at the same time. So we kind of had this joint unemployment phase, which is actually really, really fun if you ask me. And we called it our best unemployed moments. It was like the bum life. It was good times. She's working now and I'll be working soon. But it was like a few months period where I had literally spent everything that I was earning, and it was really bad. Like I was very concerned. I was looking at my bank statement because I was like, how am I spending 1,000 to 1,200 every single month for 6 months straight? Like, this is ridiculous. And then I sorted it out. By the way, I don't think it's wrong to spend your money. I think money should be spent, but I don't think it should be spent unchecked. Like, you should know that you're spending it and be intentional about spending it. Like, if I was like, yeah, I'm choosing to spend £1,000 this month and next month and the month after, then it's fine. It doesn't matter that I've spent so much money, but it's an issue when you have no idea that you spent the money, which is why I was panicked. Yeah, so anyway, 1,000 to 1,500, I put in investments. And then that leaves me with another roughly £1,000 to spend. And that goes on certain things towards the house, like towards my parents' house. And then I've got pets, so all their food, their insurance, their vet bills, all that stuff. And vet bills are very expensive, if you know, you know. And then the rest, again, is allocated for food spending on what things I want, which honestly has not been a lot recently. But to be fair, I do just kind of, when I need something, I just go on Amazon and just click it and it comes next day Prime. And I don't really keep track of what I've been spending on there, which is not a huge amount, but again, I'm leaving room for spending on there. Yeah, and also when like my family eat out, I often try and treat them because I would like to. I earn money, I would like to treat my family to a nice meal out. And so usually it will be those expenses as well. And I'm still putting in a good amount of money into my investments. And of course I've got things like phone bills, Wi-Fi, that kind of stuff as well. And then I do occasionally do a weekly shop for my family as well. So this is not just for me, this is for the groceries for our family. And we have a family of 5. But again, I can only afford to do these things and treat people that I care about, treat my family and treat my friends, and also enjoy myself with my money because I live with them. And it's much easier to do that when you live with your parents. Yes, I'm relatively young, but honestly, I wouldn't even mind living with my parents until I was 26, 27. I know there's this whole stigma around living with your parents for a long time, but I just feel like, why wouldn't you? They're your parents, they're the only people that you can do that with. And there shouldn't really be this whole stigma around it, because why would you just leave obviously if you want to and you need to move away for work or something, that's completely different, but just moving out because you feel like there's pressure of, I can't really stay with my parents for too long because you have to, and then having so much to pay for all of that is kind of not that sensible. I always say this on the basis of it's got to be feasible, it's got to be okay with your parents, it's got to be all of these things, right? But if they're okay with it, why shouldn't you be? There's no shame with moving back in with them after uni, or just not even moving out to begin with. Or even if you're going through a tough spot in life, it's fine to move back. Like, we're not 50 and expected to have everything together. Like, we're still young, We're still young, so it's fine. And then also, because we're young, it's important that we have that buffer to help us save. Because as a young person with not much or not any financial stability, because we're still looking for our first jobs, it's very difficult to survive. And then as a young person with no financial stability in this specific economy, it's even worse. So there should be no shame with living with your parents, with moving back in if you need to. And also, who cares? Who cares if there is a shame? Just do what you need to do for yourself. Also, I already kind of touched upon it before, but if you can stay with your parents during uni, that's fine. And also, I know some unis, you kind of have to, like Oxbridge, you have to stay within a certain radius or whatever of them, that forces people who are coming from further out of town to stay in accommodation there. But it's like, you have to, again, weigh the options, because these days uni is not the thing that gets you like a guaranteed job. It's more your experience, the way you market yourself, all of these other things that sometimes uni doesn't even teach you. They just teach you like the pure abstract stuff, and then you're kind of just thrown into the world and you have to deal with it all yourself. Don't get me wrong, I'm sure some unis have better coaching opportunities for careers and for career paths than students. But the other day I was watching this girl on YouTube, and she was making this budgeting video of how she spends her £27,000 a year in London or Oxford or something, I can't remember. She graduated from Oxford with a STEM degree. She did it in physics, and because she wants to switch into software engineering and she doesn't have much experience in that, she had to then take on an internship to build up some experience, because they wouldn't really take you otherwise. And that's why she was earning £27,000 as a fresh grad out of an Oxford degree, and not just any old Oxford degree, but an Oxford STEM degree, which goes to show that it's all about, the other things that you do, the experience that you have. It's not really about the prestigious uni that you kind of moved out your family home, racked up so much debt to get. So it's really about these other things. So really consider the pros and cons, weigh them against each other and see, is it worth me going to that prestigious uni, moving out and going into accommodation, having to take the maintenance loan and the student debt, and then how long will I have to pay that off, and so on and so forth. Because everybody's circumstances are different, but there's some base level considerations that everybody should be making. Yeah, and as you can see, a prestigious uni clearly doesn't mean a very good salary, which is the entire point of the job. Don't get me wrong, you can enjoy, your studying and so on and so forth, and I did. I love my maths degree, but there should be a minimum level of ROI that you're actually okay with, because if you don't have enough return on your investment, what was that investment for? Because most people are not doing a degree for fun. They're doing it because they want a job from it at the end. Okay, well, that was pretty much everything to do with my budget, and then loads of random stuff thrown in as well, loads of random tips. But the final takeaways are, you can pay for uni. You can honestly do anything that you desire to do. You just have to be disciplined towards that ambitious goal. Otherwise, you're not going to get anywhere. But you want to prioritize essentials and your long-term goals, because those are the key things when it comes to finances. You need to think long-term, because if you think short-term, you're not going to get very far. I can promise you that. And also, as your money rises, your lifestyle expenditure should not rise. I have doubled my income since I first started working and decreased the number of hours I work, but my lifestyle has not exploded. I pretty much wear the same clothes, the same brands, and that is all non-branded. I absolutely hate designer brands, I'll be honest with you, unless it's something very understated and it's actually just good quality. But the flashy, big brands, I'm not a fan. So I'm just looking at my clothes right now, but I wear literally the same clothes I have always worn. I eat the same stuff I have always eaten. I wear the same skincare that I've always had, and my skincare is very nice and simple. It's literally 3 things. It's the best skincare routine ever, and then maybe an occasional 4th. Yeah, so just do not fall into the trap that is lifestyle inflation every time you have more money, because you're not going to be able to save much, you're not going to be able to invest much, and also you're not going to be able to, saving and investments, remember, are for you to enjoy life. It's for you to have stability, security, and enjoy life. Have all the good things. And if you constantly increase your lifestyle inflation, I feel like there's also a level of dissatisfaction with your life that comes with that. That is a whole other topic. But there's also you can't enjoy life because you're stuck in this whole trap of having a lovely, expensive life now here in England. And I can't really travel. I can't really do much because I don't have enough savings. I don't have enough investments. I don't feel secure enough to do all the things that I really want to do, because I don't know, my clothes are too expensive, my food is too expensive, my house is too expensive, my car is too expensive. It's just, no. And also, by the way, I would have had car payments to make, but where I live, the insurance is very expensive. It's not the best area. And my first car also, because I have an automatic driving license, would have been very expensive as well. So altogether, I was looking to spend about £6,000 if I wanted a decent car. And by decent, I mean like normal, like average, not like battered up and shoddy old piece of junk, and not something really, really gorgeous. Oh, let's fly. But just a nice, decent first car. I would be paying about £6,000, and that was not including the upkeep of the car throughout the year, so that would probably be another £1,000 to £2,000. And I thought that is too much of an expense for me, because I don't even have that kind of income. At the moment, I do not have that kind of income. Yes, 2.5k might be reasonable, because it's you can make that income back in 6 months. But I was like, nah, I don't want to spend all my savings on that. And quite frankly, I don't need to drive anywhere. My job is in the town centre of where I live. And so it's impossible to find parking there unless you want to pay very premium rates, which I have no desire to do. So I'll just be busing it into work, because it's cheaper than paying parking and it's cheaper than owning a car. So it's I don't even need a car, because I won't be using the car every day for work. So it's just kind of useless for me to do that. So it's also thinking about the larger expenses and whether you really need them or not before you make them. And then my third and final takeaway tip is, you should build your savings and investments as early as you can. And I'm all for investing, but very safe investments. I invest in something called index funds, which, I can make a video about it, but it's just very, very simple stuff. And it's very safe, very not risky. It kind of averages the market over time, and you will have guaranteed returns pretty much. And that's the investing that I advocate for. I don't advocate for high risk investments, even though you can get high return on those, because I just think it's too risky for someone who hasn't built themselves in life yet. I'm still building myself. I haven't even got 20k saved up yet, It's too much for me to involve myself in risky investing if I haven't even got that in my name. But yeah, either way, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did enjoy the video and you want to know how I make my 2.5k a month, I will link that video for you here, and you can get all the ins and outs. Bye-bye.